not to the point of fat rolling, but the one that comes before.
Okay.
You know that like there's three types. I was always
There's only two in Demon Souls, right? You either fat roll or you don't.
I
Yeah,
think you're right.
I'm right.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
yeah.
just remember that basically I was like not wearing pants the first 20 minutes, and also my character was not wearing pants. Not just kidding.
Welcome everybody to episode 47 of New Game Plus Cast. My name is Juan Paolini and I'm sitting here with my co-host Cristian Caroli. But welcome, my friend.
Thank you for inviting me again. Happy to be here.
Yes, this one is going to be much more positive than the last episode that we had, which was what the fuck happened to Ubisoft. You can check that out right now. It's live. By the time you see this, it's going to be already like a week live, but you can check it out later. The whole reason we're doing these new podcasts is so everybody can check them out and it being kind of timeless. And this one's going to be the same. The topic for this episode is one that I find really interesting. I always like to ask this of people, of new gamers that I meet, and it's games you would love to experience for the first time. So if you could like be in front of a genie and you already asked for the money, you already asked for everything you wanted, and then the last wish is like, hey, could you please erase X game from my memory so that I can live it again? And so this is gonna be it for this episode. We both selected five experiences, five games, five titles that we're gonna go like one by one. We neither knows the other's title, so that's gonna be a little interesting. We're gonna go like one at a time, and yeah, that's as far as my introduction is going to go. And so let's start with you, my friend. Which is your
Ooh.
first title?
Well, I have it like in ascending order. So
Okay.
I would say that the game that on the fifth place that I would like to like re-experience again, like even like by the time that it happened, was Conker's Bad Fur Day. I think that was one of the first times. Like there are several times that you see games that they're like, can games do this? And then you're just like mind blown. And I think that game was incredible. But especially I think that the sequence with Saving Private Ryan, which I probably like a lot of people that are watching this have never played this game, but this was kind of like a, let's call it like a Banjo Kazooie Donkey Kong type of game that is for adults. It's a very mature game. It was the last game to be released on the N64, and it had this combination of like kind of like gameplay. The gameplay was like all over the place. There was a lot of things to do. There were some sections that were like shooters, or sections were platformers, or sections were just kind of like mystery puzzles, and there was a lot of movie references. And there was a particular the Saving Private Ryan sequence that it was just insane. Like for that time, I remember just first thinking that crap, this just got serious. Like, what am I playing? And just like submerging myself in the experience. And I was a kid, so it was like, can games do this moment?
Absolutely. I mean, this was one of my favorite experiences in the N64. I did not know that it was the last game released.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty interesting, and an amazing swan song for that console, which I loved. I remember. Oh, by the way, we are going to get into full spoilers of every video game that's going to be revealed, so just keep that in mind for everything that's going to come, at least for me. But yeah, back to Conquer. Such an amazing game, and what you said is very important. Like, it's very disingenuous. I think that's the right word. Like,
Yeah.
you think you're gonna encounter this platformer like Banjo Kazooie, which is made by the same people, actually Rare, and it's gonna be you see this cute little squirrel with the bushy tail and everything, and it's the raunchiest experience. Like, you have fart jokes, you have booby jokes, you have movie spoofs, like you have everything in there. And for a kid at that age, and even now, I still think of it very fondly. It's so good, such a genius way for them to infuse that British humor in there. Very different. I mean, similar to maybe Fable in the sense that it's also British, but like distant enough. But yeah, I also remember. I don't know if you played around with this, but I'm not much of a multiplayer guy. But the multiplayer for that game
Wow,
was
that was.
amazing.
People talk a lot about GoldenEye, but I think because it was very universal. But the multiplayer modes that this game had, they could have been standalone games. They were all over the place, and they were like off the top. They were offensive, and they were the game the gun the shooting in this game was just stellar. And it had rocket launchers. He had like barrel like drum guns. It had snipers. He had katanas, and he had really kind of like really good physics slash animation. I don't think you would call them physics, but like the whole system of violence, let's say, was it felt impactful and powerful, and every single weapon packed a punch. And the game modes were pretty asymmetrical. Like it wasn't just like before games. It was like one before, and they had like there was one that were like people basically running through a beach, and you could like storming a beach, and like you could like shoot them from a turret. And it was just crazy. And also it had like the racing modes. It had everything, like and they were all good. Like that studio Rareware, which is now Rare, was amazing. Like they nailed everything. Like every that game was a massive 10, and it was a wonder of engineering and game design and gameplay and story and just fun.
Absolutely. Going a little bit back to what you said about the weapons, I remember that the ones that stick out to me at the moment are the sniper,
Yeah.
which you could blow people's heads
Yeah.
because in the multiplayer you would play like the teddy bears, which were like the Nazis in the Saving Private
Teddies.
Ryan part. Yeah, the teddies.
That is.
Uh, and then you also had the squirrels, which were the Americans and stuff. And I remember that there was this map. I believe it was the only map, although I may be mistaken, where they were like these towers where the snipers would be. Like you would say, I'm gonna be sniping, and you advance with the katana. And then there were also like Uzis, like double wielding Uzis.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it was such a fun experience. Both like nowadays that game would be sold like in three parts, maybe like the single player on one side, and then the multiplayer, and then some DLC for bullshit.
It would be a live service multiplayer for it's they don't make them like that anymore. You just
Oh
talk
no.
through the game out loud, and there's so much content that you cannot believe that it's kind of like a second generation console that you're talking about. All the things that happen, like you have like a part where you're a vampire and then you become bat, and then there is the Matrix part, and the last part where it's like with a reference, like it's a boss fight with Alien, with the Xenomorph. And I don't know, like in general, everything that happens in that game is just mind blowing. But there are scenes that excel. Like last we were talking about, like some games are like 6 6 6, and then they have a 10 or so. Like this was like a 10 all around the block.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because I just everything that I can remember, because I mean I haven't played it for like maybe a couple decades, but everything that I remember, like catching the money. You remember when you caught the money, it kind of run away from you.
Yeah, it was a
The
living thing. It was like that's the thing. Like objects were sentient in the game, so there were things like the cheese was sentient, and it was aware that it's being eaten, and stuff like that. There was one of the first bosses was like a huge pile of shit.
Oh, that song is so like I have it engraved in my brain. Like I am the great. Like it's
It's
so
so
good.
good, so good.
And yeah, I would recommend anybody that hasn't played it to go and play this game
It's
because
in
it
Game
is
Pass.
it is on Game Pass. You're totally right. Because I believe that it is in Rare Replay,
Yeah.
and within that you can find a bunch of games that are also amazing. And I just wanted to have one last question for you regarding Conquer. Did you play the kind of remake that they did back in the day?
No, I didn't, because I don't remember, because I think that remake was in Xbox
Xbox.
360, right? But I don't know why I never picked it up. I should have, but I never picked it up. I think because like when you play this with an emulator, with a Per 64 emulator, it runs so good that I don't think I just didn't. So, but
You
it
know
looked
what?
it, but the it's funny because like the remaster, I saw the trailer and like some gameplays of it, and it has this very particular aesthetic of that generation. Kind of like a little fussy with depth of field that is weird, and like the color grading is different. Like I don't think it's as timeless as the actual original.
I totally agree. I was actually going to say that because I remember at the time I was like, "Oh, better graphics," and the you can actually see the little hairs on Conker's face, but the colors were a little more washed out, like you said. Like the art style doesn't really. I mean, it's good, but the original is much better, and it also remasters a lot better because I think that you don't really have each hair. You have like a more uniform kind of snout, or I don't know what the squirrels would have. And yeah, so I totally agree. Like that one is probably better to play like on an emulator where I don't know, it probably plays like at 60 frames or 120 frames, something like that. Crazy. So yeah, I totally agree. I actually saw that it was one of Xbox's games with gold, which is like the analog to PlayStation Plus's monthly games.
Yeah.
And I was really excited to pick it up and maybe check it out again. So yeah, awesome. I think that I didn't order mine in terms of like a ascending order of importance, let's say. I think I did it for some reason, and I didn't even feel like did it consciously, but I think mine is chronological, so it's also going to be interesting. So my first one is kind of an obvious one, but still nonetheless important to me. It's The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. There is a chance, by the way, that some of us overlap. Could happen, and we'll just fly with it. We'll just discuss like maybe in your case like why you put it before that which, and we'll get to that later. So yeah, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time came out in 1998. I remember that I had recently gotten the 64, and it came with Mario, which is the game that everybody had. I'm not sure if it came with the console, like packed in.
You could get it with the console.
Okay,
I think there was definitely an N64 version, because I think it was the one with the gold controller. I'm not sure.
Might be. I don't believe I had that one, but I did have 64. So I don't know. My parents, who were the ones who took care of this at the time, they just got me that the 64, and I remember like at this time my connection to gaming was like also a way for me to connect with my cousin who is like a brother to me as well. And I remember that I got this game, and for some reason, kid logic, right? Instead of sitting down and playing it, I just sat on the porch waiting for him to get to our house with the game in like a pocket in my shirt, just so we could like both go into it and play it. And that is very unusual because I am a very selfish person. So nowadays that would never happen.
Nowadays you would be like, hey, just downloaded the game. I'm gonna be playing like, if you arrive like by 7, you're gonna be probably like 8. I'll be 8 hours in, so might as well don't come because you're gonna spoil the whole thing. Sorry.
100%. That's me now. That's adult Juan in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I probably finished this game a minimum of 20 times in the whole life cycle of me playing with both the 64. Then for GameCube, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a special edition Wind Waker that came with both Ocarina of Time and then Ocarina of Time Master Quest, which was like a variant version, really weird and very interesting. And that was actually very exciting to me because it was a way for me to experience the game again and have something different. Like have all the puzzles were different, all the rooms within the dungeons were different. Everything outside of that was identical. And the logic behind the new puzzles were very weird. Like there's a reason that they didn't release that like as a mainline game. But yeah, I just remember like playing this so many times, getting the 100 Skulltulas, getting the bottles. How hard at the time for me it was to win Epona, because you had to like win the race with Ingo, I believe his name was, something like that. And and then you could like escape with her, and having her outside was like the closest thing to a fast travel we could have at the time.
You had to steal. I do remember that you had to like steal Epona. Like you had to like jump out and be like, oh, that. And then it's like, well, I remember like that being like super cool. And as an experience, it was like, now I have a horse.
Yeah, because you could beat the game and never have the horse, and you never found that out. So yeah, totally. Like so those things, and I don't know. It was so. I believe that for gaming in general, this was a very like cornerstone of things like Z targeting that are very like it's hard to find a game that doesn't have like lock-on systems.
Yeah.
And this was the first one I can think of that introduced that. And I remember that also, like looking back on it now, the step towards 3D for many franchises was hit or miss. For example, Castlevania. I liked the 64 Castlevanias somewhat, but they were never what they were on Super NES and then NES. In the case of Mario, it also revolutionized 3D gaming. In the case of Zelda, it revolutionized Zelda up to the point that then it kind of went into two types of Zeldas: the 2D ones that remained like on maybe portable consoles and stuff, and then the 3D ones went on to do many games, and they all kind of replicated what Ocarina of Time did until Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
So before I continue speaking your ear off, what do you think about this? Did you play it? I imagine yes.
No, I skipped the best Zelda game of the generation. No. I did play it, but I didn't put that one on the list mainly because for me the first one, I have never played a Zelda game before that one, and in the first. The game has a really great structure. Like the game is kind of like a master class on game design, which kind of like replicate in some other Zelda games. Where like the first part is kind of like a sandbox of this is what Zelda is, but you have to get out of here, and then you needed to pick up the shield and the sword. And for me, there was a language barrier because I didn't speak English, so I kind of like didn't have any idea, and neither did anyone in my house, by the way. So I didn't have any idea like how to get out of there. So for me, it was kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna like run around and do things, and it wasn't as seamless as of an experience as it should have been. And then it was like, okay, you know what? I need an English dictionary, and then my mom bought me like a huge English dictionary that probably had like I don't remember the name of the dictionary, but it had like all the words. Of course, it was a dictionary, and then I kind of like went like translating the things I had to do. And by the way, that's kind of like how I learned English. It was through video games. So I do remember like the first one, me trying to understand what Zelda was and how you should approach Zelda as a game and what was the goal of the game itself. So with the first one, I didn't have kind of like that massive emotional connection, but it was a fun game. And I think that I struggled a bit at the beginning. So I never really got the relaxing moment that some people have felt. But I did want to ask you, like, is there like a moment like for you is like memorable about that game that you're like, I can't believe this happened, or like something particular beyond the Epona part, which I think I share that one, which is like, yeah, at some point you're like, I have a horse, and like it's kind of like the first time in a video game where I felt like I own something. Like my character now has a horse, and this has expanded my exploration abilities.
Absolutely. You know what? I have never up until, let's say, Skyward Sword. For me, Zelda was not really a narrative experience that I would say, oh my god. Like for me, it was more about the gameplay, exploration, getting in the hearts, conquering each dungeon. For me, that was like the main thing, because I think Zelda games, like I believe this is a conscious decision by the designers, right? They don't really want to put that much narrative, like this character or the other character. Like they do like establish some lore around the three gods, the Din, Farore, and Nairu, and they kind of repeat that a little bit with some variations throughout the games. But coming back to your question, I don't think that there's like a specific part narratively. Maybe boss fights. Like I remember the Shadow Temple, which is scary as fuck when you're that age.
It is disturbing.
Very disturbing. I remember. Oh shit! There are a couple of things in that game that are scarring. I mean, for me, they were scary at the time. Not now, of course, not anymore. But one is the Shadow Temple. The second one is, I don't remember the name of the enemy, but the zombie that freezes you.
Ah, yeah.
Like, oh my god, that one is horrible.
That whole town, like that whole town when you get there and everyone's a zombie, it's like it's right now, right today they're like 4 polygons or something like that. I don't know if you've seen that tweet that there are more polygons on the ass of Lady Damescu than in the entire Resident Evil 1 game. So so it's kind of like that thing, like the fact that I can generate like that psychological, um, yeah, the psychological terror in such a small part of the game. It's a game that has a breadth of experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing that was really really scary for me was, I don't remember. So I'm sorry, I don't know if you remember, but in the Forest Temple, there's a part where if you stay still, there's a hand that comes and grabs you.
Ah, yeah.
That is also pretty scary. And also, if you manage to dodge it and kill it, little hands come up, and it's like, oh, it's horrible. But yeah, no,
It's like
I
Dark Souls inside of Zelda.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, 100%. And yeah, I would say, like, to answer to give a final answer to your questions, the bosses, like, for me, that's also something that the structure of going into a dungeon, getting a relic from that dungeon, that relic helping me understand it throughout the design of the dungeon, and then finally with the boss, that loop that then was repeated again and again and again, not only by Zelda but like games like Darksiders and blah blah blah, is something that I'm fascinated with. Like I still love it whenever I find a game that has that. But yeah, let's go. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. I mean, well, the reason why, just to finish this off, I wanted to experience it again for the first time is because I played it so many times that I know every inch of the game. Like, there's no way for me to be surprised. I mean, maybe when the 3DS version came out, that it was a little bit remastered and looked a lot better than the 64 version. That was kind of like a refresh and gave me reason to go back to it. But even now, I think that if I had to guide someone who's playing it, and I would have to like guide them through it through the microphone, I would be able to do it
A
100%.
literal blind playthrough.
Exactly. Something like that would be really really interesting.
Cool.
Give me your second one, my friend, which is
So
your next game.
I'm sure the next one is in your list. It's Metal Gear Solid. I would say that it's again one of those games where I remember like being in school and a friend of mine saying like, "Hey, I like my dad brought me this game called Metal Gear," and then he starts talking about what the game is about, and then he just doesn't shut up, and I'm like, what, like I just remember thinking like, what's the gameplay? And then he starts describing the gameplay, and I'm like, that's not a game, that's a movie, like that's a movie, like what the fuck, like it's just a book, like how does this happen? Then he starts talking about the bosses, and then he talks about Vulcan Raven, and then it's like this guy with a giant turbine on his back and a machine gun, and it's like, what? And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And then he's like, yeah, because he had finished that during the summer break, and then he's like, I can lend it the game, I can hand it to you, like you can check it out. And it's like, okay, I'll bring you the box tomorrow. And then he brings me the game, and then it's the full PC box, because it was on PC, by the way. And it's like the box, and I'm like, why do you bring me the box? I just need the CD. And he's like, no, you need the box. And I'm like, are you fucking stupid? Like, why do I need the box? Just take it. And like, okay, I took it, and I just remember like from that very beginning of the sequence with Snake popping out of the submarine. I just said, this is probably, this is insane. So I probably like, if I had a camera back then, probably my jaw was like on the floor, like I can't believe I'm playing this game. Then you start playing, it's just so good. And then comes that moment when they tell you like, hey, you need to talk to Cheryl, and I think it's Cheryl, or is it Miller? I don't remember at that point, but at some point they tell you, you have to check the physical box for the codec coordinates. And it's like, what? Like, who are you talking to? What box is like, it's this is, are you talking to me, the player? And then I went to the box, and there it was, and then it kind of all makes sense, and I made a call, and was like just mind blown, like what the fuck is going on here? Like, this is just so insane. And from there the whole game just escalates even deeper into like what a game can do. And yeah, like you just replaying, just having that brain expansion of this is what games can do in that scenario, in that genre. And then what that like it challenged every aspect of my critiques and experience towards gaming. Like I would like, if a game is not Metal Gear Solid, then probably it's not gonna be that good. And yeah, and I guess that in general, that was a game that for me was transformative. And after that, that was the expectation of every single Metal Gear after that. And in a way, they did. Like, it was never. It's a franchise that nowadays is dead, but it died the most glorious death ever, which was with the with a, with the last Metal Gear being like the most that it could be. So I think that in general, it's that game that kind of like shaped me as a gamer, I would say.
That is awesome. I, for some reason, didn't include any Metal Gears in my list,
Okay.
and I'll go into why. But the thing is that Metal Gear Solid, the first one, such a masterpiece game. Like, this is something that we kind of covered in a previous episode, but Kojima really goes beyond the medium. He goes beyond just being a game. He breaks the fourth wall, but it's not like, it's not cheesy. It's not cheap. It's done correctly. It's, you feel like it belongs
Feels
and
necessary.
feels necessary. And it's very hard thing to do, because you could like break the fourth wall and make it look ridiculous and make everything in the game be like a what's the word, like lose importance, because then I don't know, like 100 things can go wrong. But in this case, it all went so right. Like, another one that I'm sure is another example for in your list is Psycho Mantis. Like, that fight, which is barely a fight, it's more like a mental fight. It's so groundbreaking. And I know that to people that didn't live in that time, maybe it sounds like, oh, okay, like the controller board. But it's not. Like, it's so forward thinking. Like,
Yeah, you couldn't do that today because
oh
the
no,
controller is no longer plugged into the to the machine.
I know. And there's another thing that I think people forget about this for some reason, and I just got reminded of it. Psycho Mantis goes into your memory card and reads other games you have played.
Yeah, it tells you whether you played, I think, Pro Evolution Soccer and Twisted Metal. Like, I think it was only with either Konami games or first party PlayStation games. So yeah, it does that. On PC, it doesn't do that on PC, but on the PlayStation it does, and that's super cool.
It's so good. And also, I think that the reason why I didn't include a Metal Gear here is because I got really strict with the criteria of, this is something that if I play it again would never be the same. And with Metal Gear games, they have so much content, so much philosophy, so much things that you can miss the first time and see the second time, and then again with the third and fourth and fifth time, that I do believe that, like, everything is not lost when you play it a second time, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, you know.
It does make sense, but for me, there's an element of narrative wonder and on being surprised by
Absolutely.
these gimmicks, because like the second time you play them, they're gimmicks. Like the first time that you do like something like read the box, it's like, oh my god, I have to. I never done this before. I never gone to a physical box and checked something that goes through the fourth wall. And the next time you probably already know the number because like you memorized it or something. So
Exactly.
I think those tricks, they're like one time party tricks, and I love them. I love them when the first time, but other than that, also the way that the story develops, and the way that I'm a big fan. I probably, like, people already figured this out by the other episode, but I'm a big fan when the game changes while you're playing it. Like, I don't necessarily think that if a game is a shooter, then the only thing that's going to happen as the game goes forward is that you shoot more bullets, or your enemies are deadlier. Like, I think that great games can shift even genres, even like gameplay wise, and turn into something completely different while still being the same game. And I think that those are the things that usually tend to happen on Metal Gear in some occasions, without feeling like a gimmick. But they feel like they're necessary because it's what's happening on the story. It's like,
Totally agree. I mean, I don't want to say more because I think it's going to stain what you have already said. But I don't know, like Metal Gear has such a like a the villains, the themes, it's all so Metal Gear. It's so distinctive, so special. Like
Yeah.
there's it's really hard to describe unless you've played it and know what we're talking about. But yeah, this is something that I love that you put it on your list. I love the game. I played. Did you play the remake that they did on GameCube, the
Yeah,
Twin Snakes?
I played that one. I had a GameCube for a couple of years after it was a thing, and they I think it was called the Twin Snakes, and it had like the one and the second and the Metal Gear 2. So I played them. I thought it was great. I still like
Awesome.
the first one. I still like obviously like I have my tier list of Metal Gear games, but that one it has a strong place in my heart.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, 100%. I remember, just to give you one final memory of mine. Do you remember the torture scene where also let starts?
Yeah, because they
So
torture you, and then you can either give up or continue suffering. And if you had to smash that button a lot.
it was insane how much you had to mash that button, up to a point that I think that it could maybe be illegal to do that today or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it would just break the device, or there would be an article in Kotaku like, I think we should not, have a physical difficulty ingrained on pushing buttons or something like that, or pushing buttons is colonialist or something.
Colonialist, exactly. But
It's
yeah, I remember
frustrating. It's frustrating.
it is very frustrating. But I do remember that maybe if you survived, there was like a bonus, something that you got or something strange like that, or maybe I'm
So
mistaken.
that changed the story a bit, because
Uh-huh.
I think that I don't remember like right now, but yeah, like it shifted the story a little bit. Like you could help a character or another one, and then something would happen. But if you survive, you would get some bonuses,
Correct.
like some
Awesome.
items that you can immediately use and get and heal and stuff like that. And then you would have to do the whole catch up thing where you fake your death. Like that was one of the things.
Oh, that was awesome. So my next game is BioShock, the original BioShock. And this one is such a masterpiece. I believe that this would be on many people's lists, but I'm just going to explain why it
The
is on mine.
apolitical game, huh? The ultimate
The
non-political,
non-political.
non-political game.
Well, that is actually a very good topic that we could discuss around this game, because people are always saying this thing about, I don't want politics in my games, blah, blah, blah. And
And then they say they love Bioshock.
and then they say they love Bioshock. So it doesn't make any sense. Like the entire political aspect of this game, which is not really part of the game, but part of like the backstory or like the backdrop of the game, but it's very, very important. It's essential to why the game is so amazing. Like, could you have some of the story beats without that? Perhaps, but this is what gives it weight. Like, this is what makes Rapture so fascinating. I remember, like, my experience with this game was the following. Like, I remember going to the store where I bought my games and seeing this particular like cover art and thinking like, oh, that looks dumb. Looks like a weird kids game, because the Big Daddy, when you analyze it and you don't know anything about the game, it kind of looks like a cartoon character sort of. So I was like, fuck that game. But then a friend was like, hey, I read in this blog back in the internet days when reviews were not so much of a thing. I read in this blog that this game was really fascinating, blah, blah, blah. You should check it out. So I was like, okay, let's check it out. And I was very young at that point. I was like maybe, I don't know, 14 or something like that. I would have to check out the date where it came out. But when you get into the bathysphere and you have this little like infomercial of Rapture where it's like, the man in Washington wants to blah blah blah, and the man in the Kremlin wants blah blah blah, and the man in the Vatican, and we don't do any of that because we are smart people, blah blah blah. I mean the actual speech is much better than mine, but that part alone fascinated me to no end. I was like, okay, I am in this world. Like I need to know what's happening here, and going through and through, seeing the splicers, seeing the story, and I mean the most amazing moment for me is actually, of course, the "Would you kindly" moment, because like sometimes I'm just lying in my bed, like watching my phone, and I start thinking about the would you kindly thing, and I get fascinated because it's not only a narrative twist that changes everything. Like, as I said, from a narrative point, it's pretty cool. It's amazing. But what makes it genius in my eyes is that there are like two parallels of things going on. There is Jack, who's the main character, going through the story, and then there's you playing the game. So narratively, Jack has this whole thing where he's being mind controlled, and when you trigger his trigger word is his trigger phrase is "Would you kindly?" So whenever somebody says that, in this case Atlas, aka Fontaine, says this, then he has to do it because he's mentally obliged or compelled to do it. But in the case of the gamer, you do it because that's the only way you move forward in the game. Like you have to go level 1, level 2, level 3, blah blah blah. So the fact that they united these two things and made the mind control make sense, and they hid the mind control from you because you were in sort of that comfort zone of I'm in a game, and if I want to move forward, I have to literally walk forward. It breaks my brain every time I think about it. Like it's something that it's just so genius, and I don't know. I'd love to hear your take.
I think that it's one of those games that they gave kind of like political awakening to a lot of people, because even though it is a critique to the I think it's called subjectivism of Ayn Rand, and the individuality kind of like critique around it is pretty strong. It's a game that actually resonated with people because when you start playing like action video games as a teenager, you kind of like feel like you want to own the world, and like the world is not going in the right direction, and it's kind of like just because of you, you they haven't given you the opportunity, or like if people were actually like driven to change things by themselves, they would probably do it if they put themselves first and whatnot. And it's kind of like a very philosophical game in that area. And I think that the critique goes by to a lot of people. Like a lot of people miss the point of what a dystopia, a sci-fi dystopia, that whole philosophy builds around the science that they're trying to generate. And also, it was a game that started the whole ludonarrative dissonance conversation, because I think that basically your goal is to help someone else in the game, and the game is about kind of like individualism, and that on itself was kind of like, I don't know, like if it's ironic or just like badly constructed, but like that was kind of like the first time that discussion actually came into existence in the world of game design. And then it was taken to a next level when people were talking about Uncharted, where you basically handle a guy that kills hundreds of human beings and feels absolutely no remorse. And the second he can, he just cracks jokes and just talks with his wife and whatnot. Well, you get the point. But going back to Bioshock, it is a game that was kind of like a cornerstone on like what the environmental storytellings of game and kind of like the world building could leverage on. Like it doesn't have to be this far-fetched metaphor from ideologies or things that you see in plain sight, or just saying we're just going to do this Soviet building because it looks Soviet and this kind of looks kind of totalitarian. It was like, no, we're going to take the ideology of someone and build a game around a dystopia that exists on top of it, which it's something that felt incredibly honest. And again, it's the whole opposite of how Ubisoft makes their games. Like it's exactly that where they fail. Like this game, the baseline of this game is it's a failed implementation of an ideology with a sci-fi backdrop. And then when you navigate through the game and the decisions you make and the gameplay, it's just and the art direction and like what it means to create a new civilization completely underwater, no gods, only men. That's a phrase, right? Like no
Yeah,
gods,
yeah.
only men. So it's pretty strong, and that's where people like really engage. So it's a great game to have in the list.
Totally. And back to where you were saying about the perception of this game, this is one of the things that I always find so disappointing about games media in general. I mean, I'm not saying that they all are this stupid, but like it happened with this one where like I mean, I find it so frustrating, not only in games, it can happen in a book, it can happen in a movie or whatever. When you choose a setting or you choose a specific trait for a villain or something, that doesn't mean you're advocating for it. Like Ken Levine, who's the creative mastermind behind all this, using subjectivism, like Ayn Rand's whole philosophy or ideology, for this game, doesn't mean he's advocating for it. Like actually when you look at it with like a little bit of intelligence, he's actually criticizing it because
Yeah.
well, I mean he obviously takes it to the extreme, like in this society, which couldn't happen or whatever. But yeah, he is ultimately criticizing it. And the same happened with BioShock Infinite, which is also a game I could put on my list, but I didn't want to put two of the same franchise, where you have Colombia, which is like Rapture, like this dystopia in the beginning of the 20th century and blah blah blah, and you see all of this racism and you see all of this horrible things. Like, do you really think that Ken Levine is advocating for racism in this game? It's like, really? And there were headlines about it at that point when the game came out in 2013. And it's like, I can't take you seriously if this is what you're opening with, right? Like, I can't. And yeah, so yeah, I agree.
It is a game that like really uses something in order to tell a story, and I don't think that every element that you have in your product or like in your piece of art has to have an opinion. Like I think that there is a strong opinion and there's a strong critique when it comes to subjectivism in Bioshock, but or is it like wait, is it objectivism or subjectivism? I'm like a
Yeah, it's objectivism. Yeah.
damn it. Well, there you go.
Okay,
You get how deep we're into philosophy. We're more into games, not into philosophy. So, but again, it's something that you're using to tell a story on top of an ideology, and the hints are there. I don't think like you necessarily like if you do a thing, if you do a game about killing Nazis, um, like it's not like you're being dismissive of the German people that were manipulated, or you're being dismissive of like kind of like the political social complexities of the time or whatnot. It's just that that's the game, you know. And I think that the same thing happens with Bioshock. Like the only way that someone would have the idea of build a city underwater is because they got fucking tired of everything, and the ideology that permits that as a vessel, it comes from Ayn Rand. Like if you like, otherwise you would not build Rapture. Like and that's the cool thing about good world building. It's like, okay, I have this crazy idea. Why would this happen? And then you actually find a reason that makes sense and that had people thinking like, well, the only way that this would happen is not like if the communists decided to go underwater. It's like it's if the people that follow Ayn Rand were like, you know, why we don't even need air. You know, we can go underwater and do this thing. And the setting and the way that that game introduces you to those ideas, it's really captivating. And the fact that it failed, that you're living a failed, you're shooting your way out of a failed dream. It's also immersive.
Totally immersive and totally kind of, I mean, it kind of gives you the curiosity of seeing what did this look like when it was not like normal yet, right? And you kind of get a little bit of that in the DLC for BioShock Infinite, which is really good and I can recommend it. But yeah, I mean, I mean, there's we could do a whole podcast on BioShock, really, totally, because
after reading what objectivism is,
after
and
reading
not
Atlas,
confusing it with exactly Atlas Shrugged and whatnot.
Exactly. Oh my god. But yeah, I mean, this was one that came in less than 5 seconds to my list because I knew that this kind of changed my gaming fandom, my gaming brain. It changed everything. And I have to say that BioShock Infinite, some people downplay it a lot because I mean, I've heard critiques that say that it's too much of a shooter, which I think is kind of ridiculous. But I mean, to each his own. I do think I played it last year and just kind of went through it again. through all of them. And I do believe that it kind of falls apart in terms of the logic behind time travel, which is something that I believe that it's so hard to do right. Like I almost think that time travel should not be touched again because it complicates things so much that it's like, okay, let's just leave this in Pandora's box and not open it, right?
But it's not really like time travel, right? It goes they go through kind of like alternate timelines kind of thing. It's still weird. It's still like at some point they go from, but like that's also kind of like part of the thing. They were like, okay, we have this ideology, and now what happens if you go into this place where we have this other ideology? And then it's like, okay, but it was I thought it was a wild ride. Like when it like if the first one was characterized of being like close quarters and like claustrophobic and underwater and whatnot, this one was like on the opposite. It was kind of like open air combat to some extent, and the whole grapple thing was awesome. And I don't know. I think it was. I had more. I would say I had more fun with the third one, but definitely the first one felt more unique and mind blowing.
Oh no, yeah. In terms of fun, in terms of gameplay, the third one is the clear winner because I mean it benefits of so many iterations and like trial and error from the team and everything, 100%. But just to cap this off, I would say that the like you're totally right about the different realities and stuff like that and like parallel universes and everything that I found that amazing. I mean, somebody once explained, like, gave me this analogy for this game that it's like a Christopher Nolan video game, and it is like a lot in many ways. The reason why I said that it kind of falls apart, and maybe I'm wrong, and I would rather be wrong because that makes this game better, is that in the end, I don't know if you remember that the many Elizabeths drown Booker, so that this guy Comstock never even lives.
Yeah.
So they kind of erase the future by killing him in the past, which also deletes them. And then you have a DLC with another Elizabeth. So it's like, how did this like
Well,
the
because
whole grandfather
they wanted
paradox?
to go back to Rapture. That's ultimately the reason. Like they needed to go back to Rapture, and that was it.
But yeah, like if they kill Booker and Comstock never becomes Comstock, how do they become Elizabeth? Because if he's dead, then there's no Elizabeth either. I mean, it's just weird.
Yeah. It's weird. Like that's the thing about the third one. Like it just goes into a I don't even want to say philosophical. It just goes into a narrative tangent of you should die because you're responsible of these things, even though they haven't happened yet. So
yeah, Minority Report kind of little thing that happened
it's
there.
guilty of a crime that he hasn't committed.
Yeah. But I mean, in at that point, I just kind of suspend my disbelief because I love the games, and I do believe that the part where they say there's always a lighthouse, there's always a girl, there's always a man, blah blah blah. That I found really cool because it means that this is just one of the timelines where another one was with Jack and Rapture, and this one is with Booker, and yeah. So
it was well written. I would say that.
Totally. So let's go to your next game.
Yeah, so it would be, I would say it's like World of Warcraft, the first time I played it. And in particular, the first time I walked into Orgrimmar, the Orc city, the Horde capital, let's call it that way, of the trade Horde capital from the world of Warcraft. And I think that I was a big Warcraft fan before that, and also like StarCraft a lot. And the idea that you were gonna, for the first time ever, be part of this fantasy where you would have a character and live in this world. Like it felt like a very far-fetched promise, but the first time that I experienced that was just insane. The new player experience in World of Warcraft has changed a lot, for the good. I think that before, I don't know if people had the opportunity to relive it. I did, but I'll get to that with World of Warcraft Classic. But I remember just like, with my dial-up connection, just going into this world, deleting like almost every single file I had available on my computer so it could fit on the installation. And then you first land, I was a Tauren, which is kind of like a big bull. And then you start in the Tauren city, you do a few missions, and they're like, okay, now you go to Thunderbluff, the capital, and then you can go to Orgrimmar. And you start like a very small town, and then you go to kind of like a city, But then when you get to Orgrimmar and you experience the sheer size of it, and just like walking through those doors, and in seeing that inside there are hundreds of people, and there is trade, and there are portals, and there are means of transportation somewhere else, it was just like visiting a new dimension. It was just like experiencing a new world, and it felt incredibly transformative. It was like, I'm not a big MMO fan ever since, and I didn't speak that much English back then, so for me the whole experience was tough. But with my broken English and just kind of like going there and asking questions and doing things and trying to figure out what to do next, I experienced some of the greatest gaming experiences I ever had with people from all over the world, and that was just crazy. Back in the day, where these big AAA studios were able to do the next big thing, like at the same time there were other MMOs, but nothing as massive and as immersive as World of Warcraft, because it came from the Warcraft world that you already knew, and I don't know, like that whole time was just crazy. And recently, when they relaunched, they did kind of like the remaster version of World of Warcraft. I decided to have a character go from 1 to basically 60 without real friend. Well, let's say real friends. Like, I did it just by myself. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try to replicate the experience, because the systems have changed. The game nowadays scales quickly. The battles are different. The powers are different. The way that everything has been revamped, and also the monetization behind it has changed as well. Like, you can do some pretty play to win tactics. And I don't know, like back then you actually had to work for it, and for some people it might be very boring, but for me it was very immersive. And I did that from scratch, and I met like some new people, and like I joined a clan. It was like try without kind of like real human, like yeah, without real contact, and it was the closest I've gotten to recreating that experience. But nothing will ever be as the first time that you fumble for things and discover what you can do in a virtual world. So that was really cool. And it's
No,
number three.
number three, because yours is in ascending order. That's
Exactly.
true.
5, 4, and now 3.
Exactly. No, that's awesome, man. I don't really have much to say around that because I never played an MMO. I believed I dabbled with it maybe like a friend's thing or something, and I thought that it was really interesting. But I've always been more of a single player kind of person, and yeah, so I don't really have much to say there. I did want to ask you about the, was it Warcraft Reforged or the classic one you mentioned?
So
That
no,
one.
they did Warcraft 3. They did a remaster, which was horrible. It was a terrible, terrible remaster. But what they did is like they launched the basically there was this idea of what vanilla Warcraft was, which was kind of like the initial world and the initial rules and the initial everything that some pirate servers were running, and then what they did was like, you know what, we're gonna give you this experience again, because if you play nowadays, it's it's a lot more about grinding, and there are things like drop rates, like and items can be heroic or they can be, so it's kind of like there's a little bit of RNG around how you get gear today. And if you want to look cool, it's pretty easy to look cool, like nowadays. Like it's armor is no longer strictly speaking a social element. Like you could be looking like, like the ultimate death warrior, and then yeah, you're just a simp. Kind of, like it's, and that's changed. The new dungeons and the way that you approach it also has how can you call it, how do you call it, like a skill based, is it like, I don't know, like if you're level 60 and I'm level 40, and we both jump in, there's like
Oh,
there's a skill
scaling,
scaling,
scaling.
exactly. There's scaling around your characters, so you could go in any dungeon and have fun. with anyone. And that there was also matchmaking. Like if you want to go in a dungeon, you no longer need to actually recruit people and go into the dungeon. But back in the day, if you want to go into the dungeon, you would have to like sit outside the dungeon and be with people like, hey, do you need an extra one? And then they'd be like, sure, what are you? And like, I'm a healer. And I was like, oh, we actually need a healer. And like those type of interactions that no longer exist. Nowadays, you just say, okay, I want in, and then it could automatically do the matchmaking for you. And just like that, every single experience on top of the experiences. Also, economically, having a mount was so hard to begin with. Like if you had a mount, you already sank a few dozens of hours into the game. And then if you had a flying mount, boy oh boy, you were, you've been around. You're like a transformative piece of like force of nature in that server. And that changed. Nowadays, you anyone can have a mount. You can buy a mount for 10 euros, and then there are mounts that are like sponsors. So like if you want to sponsor like LGBTQ communities, you can buy the LGBTQ mount and stuff like that. And I don't know, like a typhoon relief mount and help charities, and like it just, which again I fully support, and it's cool, but it's not the original experience of what having a mount used to be. And it's not that like I'm a mount supremacist or something. It's just that it was a pretty streamlined game, and it felt like you were just dropped there and had this mission that would take months of your life to achieve, which was, okay, let's reach level 60. And this experience has been displaced by survival games. Like the games that now deliver that experience are survival games like what was the name? Valheim, like the
Valheim. That's the one I
or
was thinking.
exactly, or
Rust.
Rust, or ultimately Let's Starve, and those type of it has been replaced by that. So that aspect of oof, I'm no one and I want to become a god has changed a little. And I think that's cool. Like games evolve, but that first time walking into Ogrimmar and seeing like it's just like the first time you go online into the internet.
That's
just
awesome.
crazy.
That's awesome. I wish I could have more to say about that, but I really
Don't try it. Don't investigate. You don't wanna go in right now.
Oh no. The thing about those games is that I respect them a lot and everything, but I like to play multiple games. Like I love going into the Yakuza series, for example, and playing through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just staying in one game, I feel like I'm stagnating, and it's just me, right? Like,
No, and it requires, in the case of these games, they require a lot of time. It's a time sink. Like they have been designed that way. So I perfectly understand if people don't like it, because I don't like it anymore. But back then it was like, wow, this is like where it begins.
Yeah, the closest thing I had to an experience like that one was with Destiny 2, which I loved when I loved it, but I can't stand it anymore. I can't.
Yeah,
I just can't.
the whole thing, the same for me. Like if I have to kill a boss 20 times to get a weapon, then I don't want that weapon. Like yeah, I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Like why would I want to do this? Like just have it, drop it every single time. I'm sorry. Like it's not for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So my next game is, I put in here Bloodborne, but you could substitute that with any other From Software game that is not Dark Souls 2. Because the thing about these games that I would love to experience them for the first time and everything like that is, we kind of went into this a couple of episodes ago when we talked about difficulty. It is that the level of immersion that I feel with FromSoft games, where I don't know what's lurking behind the corner. I don't know if there's a trap in there. I don't know if there's a snake that's gonna bite me and poison me and kill me. I don't know if there's gonna be like a, I don't know, like do you know when you press like a little button and then stakes come in and kill you? I don't know what's gonna happen. So I always love that feeling. I used to describe it like, holding my shield up and walking very slowly. But I don't use shields anymore in Dark Souls because they're for babies. So I just put the shield on the back and double wield a very huge sword and just walk slowly like that. But yeah, like the feeling that I get exploring I don't think there's any other game where I want to see every little inch of each map. Like, I don't want to miss a thing. And I don't only say that because I'm a big Aerosmith fan, by the way. Go.
No,
Yeah.
I think that it's insane that not a single From Software game has a map. But if you ask me to draw that map, I will.
You could.
Like, I think I've memorized every single From Software game that I've played. Like, I know where everything is. I know where one thing goes to the next, what enemies you found in each of those corners, how to defend yourself, where are the bonfires. It's an exercise of repetition, because it's not like it hurts to have this information. You just have it. Like, if you tell me to navigate for Bloodborne, I would be like, let's go. Some parts I think I would struggle a bit more, because I think that Bloodborne has a really cool art direction, but it's not that distinctive to me, where like in some places I'm like, it's, have I gone through here kind of moments. But
Especially the cities. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
I think that happens to me a lot with the cities. Like, it's from the whole From Software catalog. That one's the one where I'm almost like, where's this window kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. But the thing that happens to me with these games is that I play them once, love it, and then when I'm gonna play it again, I think I'm missing half of the experience, which is the discovery, like discovering this item, discovering what's lurking here, because I already know that there's a guy over there, there's a guy over there, and that's ultimately why the New Game Plus is always like a couple of hours instead of 30 hours, right? Which, I mean, there's nothing you can really do to remedy that other than have a deneuralyzer and come have Will Smith erase your mind. But for example, I just recently purchased Dark Souls Remastered, the first one, which I hadn't bought yet. And I haven't played Dark Souls since maybe that came out in 2011, or
I'm making
am I
the math.
off the mark?
I think it's 11. Yeah, it's 11.
Okay, so I haven't played that one maybe since then. So I mean, it's gonna happen the same way with Mass Effect. Like, I remember some parts, probably all the bosses. I haven't played the DLC, so I have a reason to go back and like revisit it. I'm not gonna have that experience totally like the first time I did, but there's gonna be some of it there, especially with the DLC. So yeah, I mean, like, that feeling of it used to be terror, it used to be fear. Now it's such excitement. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and I think it's funny how those games, they're super streamed on Twitch, and it's because of the no hitters and how that game like turns into something else after you finish it. And that's pretty cool, because like it gives you these skills that are like this map awareness, or let's say From Software awareness, from like where you know how to approach these games. Like, if you finish one of those games, like I finished Dark Souls 3 and then I went into Bloodborne, and I won't say it was easy, but it was an easier experience than Dark Souls the first time I played. Like, I already understood, like, okay, what do I do? What's my build? Okay, how do I explore? I don't give a shit if I die. And then I moved that into Sekiro. And same thing. I was like, okay, I'm gonna approach this a bit differently than other games. But yeah, it's like the thing for me, whether it's like a memory wipe would help, I'm not sure, because that level of tension, it's so stressful. Like, the first time, it's not a relaxing game at
No,
all. At all.
no,
Like,
no.
I finish, like, once you're done with that game, it's just a relief, because it's like I don't have to do this again for a while.
Yes, I totally agree. And you know what? Back in 2011, which is when this game came out, I think I had an experience with the last boss of Dark Souls where I kept dying and I kept dying and I kept dying, because, I mean, that's what this game does, right? And I don't even remember why I had this realization. Probably because of the rolling. But as I said before, I used to play like very high armor,
Fat rolling.
like, I mean, not to the point of fat rolling, but the one that comes before.
Okay.
You know that, like, there's three types. I was always
There's only two in Demon Souls, right? You either fat roll or you don't.
I think you're
Yeah,
right.
I'm right
Yeah.
because I
Yeah, yeah.
just remember that basically I was like not wearing pants the first 20 minutes, and also my character was not wearing pants. Not just kidding. Uh, but yeah, like you're basically not wearing pants for the first 20 minutes because you don't want to fat roll in the beginning of the game. Like rolling, it's an incredibly good tactic in Dark Souls.
100%. 100%. But so for some reason, I got the idea in me to beat this guy, I was gonna have to have like, well, no, I had like this movie moment, like I can't think of an example, but I'm sure that you're familiar with having seen it at least once, where it's like a warrior that's gonna face his final challenge, and then instead of going into it with all the armor, he takes like the helmet off and everything off. So I went in naked,
The
totally
power
naked.
of friendship.
The power of friendship, yes, totally anime.
Yeah.
And I think it was Quaylag's sword, because Gwyn at the end, he has a, I'm never gonna forget this, of course. He has a weakness to fire, even though he has a fire attacks. And some kind of Zen thing possessed me where I beat the guy naked with the fire sword. And it was such an amazing thing that I had been there like hours and hours.
But it's always that. It's always there are several things. There's of course a survival bias of like, okay, this is what I did. But then there's also the lateral thinking of I am gonna also like that probably improve a lot to your stamina because like I you probably like went from like fat rolling to like just moving around and for almost
Exactly.
no stamina. I'm not sure. Well, was it stamina? I'm not sure. But the point is like you improve one thing that probably was what you were missing. I think that I had that a lot with Dark Souls 3 with the final boss of the DLC where again like I was like wearing a shield and then it was like okay I don't need a shield and I don't remember if I killed him. I had like a huge machete, and it was Jorm's machete, and then I was like, okay, let's use an axe, and then I switched to the axe, and I had a lot more freedom to use my stamina, and that changed the way they approach the fight. And then after like 3 tries or something, I finally did it, and that's a big thing in those games because there are constraints that they're invisible to you until you change something, and then it's like, okay, now let's do this. Now let's go. And yeah, that's memorable. And then the next time you play it, it's not as exciting. Like you just like it's easier. You know what to do, and you also trust yourself because there, like I can't stress this enough. But there are moments when you face these bosses where you say, this is impossible, this can't be done, and then your mind goes into, oh, I need more stats. And this is a game where the stats they grow logarithmically, so after 120, after level 120, like the game doesn't give a shit like how many levels you have, like going from 40 to 60 in strength is like, okay, go for it, but that's not gonna dramatically change the outcome of your fights.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, my friend, what's your second game? Because we're going
So
backwards.
the second one, recently a remastered was announced. We had no dates. I would say it's Dead Space,
Oh,
and I
yes.
think that if I were to play that game again, which I will,
Will.
I remember a lot of it. That's a sad part. There's no way, but the scene I bought this game because someone recommended it to me, and I didn't know much about it. I saw the trailer, and I I didn't know what the whole thing about like cutting off limbs was about. So in my mind I thought, oh, there's dismemberment, like that's the thing. But I just thought it was kind of like a graphical thing, you know, like it doesn't really affect your shooting. Like it just happens if you shoot a leg, then the leg goes off. And I remember just like playing the game and then seeing in the walls cut off their limbs, and then something in the back of my head saying like, what does that mean? You know, like this is so that thing that they said about the limbs, it's real. Okay, and then just going in through the game is just, it was horrible in a good way. Like it's a game that scared the shit out of me. The sense of a scarcity, how you use your bullets was a first time for me as well. Like I used to like I don't run out of bullets in most of the games I play. Here I was like running out of everything, and it was like shit. I can't face this right now. I have to run, or like this is just gonna kill me. Like facing death, certain death. Like I don't have the ammo for this guy. Just gonna kill me. Like it was one of those games that was very transformative. And also, I'm a big fan of the Event Horizon movie, the only Paul W. S. Anderson good movie that he has, and it just clicked, and playing through the whole thing was scary as fuck. So I can't wait
Is
to play it
that
again.
is that the guy that made the Resident Evil movies as
Yeah,
well?
yeah. He
Okay.
only has one good movie, and it's that one.
I haven't watched it. I
You haven't
was
watched Event Horizon? You should.
I think I
You should. Like it's a gamer movie.
okay.
It's
Awesome.
definitely a gamer movie. Like if you're a gamer, you're gonna like that movie. That's kind of how I measure that movie. That's why he
That's a
did.
good.
That's why he after did like 7 Resident Evil films. He was like, I can't do gamer movies, and then he didn't give a
Oh
fuck.
my god.
He was like, my wife needs a job.
Oh, because is Mila Jovovich
Yeah,
his wife?
yeah,
Oh my god, no.
yeah. That's
So
it.
yeah, Dead Space.
She has a daughter, and they're thinking about like kind of like doing action movies with her as well. If there's a woman in his life, he's gonna try to make money out of her in movies, action movies. Don't worry.
Oh my god, exactly.
But yeah, Dead Space, fucking amazing game, and I can't wait to play it again. Like I'm excited that they announced that they're working on it. Probably it's gonna be like 2023 date, I believe, because also it's gonna be next gen only, and they're redoing a lot of things. So the rough edges of these games, which there was a lot of them, because this was kind of like a very forward thinking game, are gonna be patched out. So I can't wait. Like it's just this game's scary as fuck. It's the scariest game anyone could play, because you're not like a super soldier. You're an engineer in the middle of space, and you're. It's the same. Like dying is the only reasonable things. Like it's if you ask me, like if I were Isaac in that space, I would fucking kill myself. Like it just that's how scary this game is. Like the fact that you're trying to fight alone in a ship against this menace, it's just terrifying.
I totally agree. I mean, it's the sensible thing to do.
Exactly. It's like, whoop, I'm out.
No, I mean this game is a total masterpiece. The announcement of the remake is something that I mean there's a couple of remakes that would make me so excited, and this is one of them definitely. Like I remember when Mass Effect Legendary Edition was like being rumored, not even yet announced. I was talking with John, and he was like, "I need this to happen because I'm a big Mass Effect fan." Blah blah blah. And I was like, "That's awesome. I'm happy for you that because this seems to be coming. But what I need, in the same way as you with Mass Effect, is a Dead Space kind of remaster or whatever you want to call it. In this case, it's going to be a remake, which is 100 times better. It's coming from a very talented team in EA Motive. They
Yep.
did Star Wars Squadrons, which was a really really cool game. I am very excited about the graphical fidelity of this game because, I mean, at the time, I think that it had its rough edges, but for the time that it came, it was a good looking game.
Yeah.
I mean, but right now, like seeing like one of the genres, or maybe the genre that benefits the most out of photorealism is horror, 100%. Because like we see it with Resident Evil, the RE engine, which is one of the best engines I think that in current video games. Like the way that they render everything is so good, and it just makes you more immersed in the fear and in the monsters and in everything. So I think that
Yeah, I can't
photorealism
wait
really
for the
helps this.
physics to blow off their limbs in the middle of like zero gravity, and just having blood spatter all over the place, and see what they can do with the lighting and the atmosphere and the music. Like this game can slap if they do it right. And even if they just follow the same formula than before, it's a story that is unlike no other. The whole thing that you're an engineer just trying to figure out what happened to your girlfriend, um, it's crazy because again, it's just you're not you don't have the tools literally to face this threat at any point during your gameplay. At any point during your gameplay, you're like, bring it on. It's always like bring it little by little so I don't die. I'm scared right now, and that's super cool. So yeah, can't
Totally,
wait
no,
for that.
100%. That before we move on, there is one memory that I have of the first game, and this is a total spoiler for the ending. Like, I don't know about you, but when I finish a game and I know, like, okay, I already killed the last boss or did the last mission, whatever it is, you kind of relax, right? Like you know where
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah,
with
yeah.
this. And so, like usual with all the games that I finished, like hundreds of games, I kill the last boss, I grab the controller, I put it on the table, and you kind of lean back. And there's a scene where Isaac sits on the bridge of the ship. He kind of does the same thing you do. He kind of relaxes, takes a deep breath, and then out of fucking nowhere, the camera does like a very slow like panning,
Yeah.
and then there's your girlfriend there with a face, and she does like a jump scares of some kind. And I jump like I don't think I've ever jumped with a video game scare as
It's
high
the
as I
worst
jumped with that.
possible ending because also it's like 3 years to the next one. At that point, you don't even know if there's a sequel incoming. So it's like, what the fuck just happened here? Have I just been tricked? And I think that's in a
100%.
way that's kind of like the metaphor of this whole of the games, like how this threat expands across the universe and like what it means. Like I think that it's a game that is unapologetically horrific. Like it's not. I wouldn't say like it's about a certain evil thing. It's just like I wouldn't say it's about religion or it's about no. It's just like it is what it is. It's like this fucking horrible thing that makes you see monsters everywhere, and then you're just doing your best.
And what do you think about like I love that you brought that because I wanted to ask you about it. It's the religious slash occult aspect of the game of this. What did they call it? The marker,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, about the marker. So I think that it's like the thing is like with the sequels is like more things need to happen, and the idea that like that they build a religion around it, and the whole religion is like they just want to die and become this unified monster. It's pretty cool. It's pretty scary, but I think it's there more for the sake of scaring you because humans can be just as scary as monsters, and that's kind of like the trick. Like I'm not only fighting these monsters, but these guys that are beyond. They're beyond salvation. They're like, what are you gonna? What are you gonna do? Their ultimate goal in life is to die and become monsters. It's like, okay, I'm out. Like these guys are they can't you can't negotiate with them. So for the sake of the story, it really helps, and it's the only way to like tie the whole thing together. And that's kind of like what I like about the first one, that it's just a ship and like how it destroyed a ship, and then it's like, okay, how can this destroy an entire planet? And then the third one is kind of like Hollywood style, like how can this destroy the entire universe and one man stopping it? That's kind of like the thing. I think that
Yeah.
with spaceship terror movies, which there's a lot of them, one man can destroy a spaceship, and that's
Yeah.
pretty much the threat. Like, and that's why Alien works. That's why Aliens work as well, because there's something that can detonate and destroy everything. But then when it becomes this massive thing, it loses drama. Like there's not one single thing that you can do to stop a war. You have to like fight several battles, and that's not very anecdotal or cinematographic. So
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. Like the one xenomorph in Alien has more meaning than the many ones in Aliens 2, for example. And that's not a knock against Aliens. It's just the reality.
it's I think it's one of the best sequels ever, Aliens.
Yeah.
But the
Yes.
first one, I think that the threat and it scales together. Like,
Yes.
and the problem with the third one is like there's only one again, and it's kind of like, where are we going? But then at the same time, the threat of aliens, it's because if they take over, we're fucked. But if they were actually to arrive to Earth and we were to fight back, there would be several more battles. Like
Totally.
that's the same thing with real life wars. Like there are battles that are defining, but then it's like, okay, then what happens, kind of thing. So
I'd love to ask you about this. So, what do you think about the second wave of Alien films, starting with
how
Prometheus?
they should. They're unapologetically bad. Like they're just bad. They look good. They have great actors and huge production value, but I think they missed the point. Completely missed the point of what make the first two or three movies great.
You know what? I think that they could have had something very interesting. I don't think I dislike them as much as you do, but I think that Prometheus could have been an amazing movie, right? With
Yeah,
the whole thing about the I think they call them the architects. Maybe I'm wrong, or something like
I
that.
don't remember, but it was very iconic. Like it was a very successful movie. I think it was kind of like all over the place with some things, like at the script level. And I think that the fact that it didn't have kind of like a real monster, it was also cool to some extent. But then you see the upcoming films like Covenant, and then you realize that they actually don't have a plan. Like they don't know where they're going.
No,
It's a
they
it's,
don't know where they're
that's
going.
that's the thing. Like you feel the problem for me with modern day storytelling is like, oh, they have a plan because it's a franchise. It's gonna spawn like 4 seasons in a movie and shit like that, and they don't. Like that's not true, and that's when it gets disappointing. I don't have a problem with the first Prometheus. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I thought it had like plot holes and stuff like that the first Alien films just don't have. And I think that Alien 4 Resurrection, it's kind of like a good film that was handed to the wrong director because it was the director of Amelie. So
Yeah, it was. What was his name again?
I don't remember the name, but the script was from Josh Whedon, and Josh Whedon says that they filmed it wrong. Like he uses that sentence, they filmed it wrong. Like you read the script and you see what happens, and it's still an alien movie. It still is fucking cool, but like it's not scary. It's like if they were to do Dead Space with slapstick humor, like "Hey, you lost the leg, give me a hand, boy," and then exactly, exactly, and then they put like someone that's a cowboy for some reason. And then he
Dude,
has
you're
the
totally right. The Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
He's the yeah. I remember when I saw this years ago. I was like, why him? Like what the hell? Because like having what's his name, David Fincher in the third one kind of makes some sense, even though that movie's a little bit of a mess as well.
Yeah,
Well,
he
a lot
actually
of a mess.
he was this close. He it's I think it's one of these only movies where there's no 4K remaster. Like he doesn't give a shit. He was this close to not even having his name in the film. Like he was gonna be like someone else direct this. Like and usually
Please.
what happens there is like the executive producer gets tagged as the director or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's sad because the idea is so good, but yeah, like going back to Prometheus, like they could have had something very cool because I do believe they play around with the idea, or maybe they did in the first draft of the script or something like that, where the architects are like one architect used to be Jesus, something like that, so they kind of give birth to mankind.
Yeah,
It's kind
it's
of
the
a
origin. It's the origin of mankind,
yeah.
and there I remember like there's some mention about Jesus as maybe he was just genetically superior or shit like that.
Yeah, that would have been really cool.
Because also like the rest of the movies, they're kind of like about the droid, which I don't remember the name of him, like the character played by
Oh
Michael
fuck,
Fassbender. um,
David? No,
David, exactly, David and Tyrell, and was it Tyrell or Wayland? I think it's
Wayland,
Wayland. Tyrell is the
yeah.
from Blade Runner, which is just in the same universe allegedly. So it's like kind of like that build up where they go like, oh, this characters are just droids are what Alien is about. It's like not really. Alien is about, at least for me, or the first movie, it's about people that they're facing monsters and they're not superheroes. Like the first one is with Ripley, that she's just a trucker. She just works in a it's the equivalent of working like in a container ship. She has no idea how to fight this thing. And then in the second one, like these Marines, they don't stand a fucking chance against dozens of alien and a giant queen. And the same thing applies in that space. It's like it's scary because this guy is an engineer. Like an engineer, like it doesn't matter what type of engineer he is. He's like I never faced this thing before. Like and you're like makeshifting your nail gun in order to like blow limbs of monsters, and you're just looking for your girlfriend, but you also at the same time you don't have the option to like escape. It's survival. It's real survival.
It's totally crazy. Okay, so let's move on to the next game, which I believe is my fourth game. I have here The Last of Us.
Chin chin
The
chin.
Chen is right, my friend. Naughty Dog game, very important game for both for them and for me. Like, it's such
For them,
a
I bet it's more important for Neil Druckmann than for you.
oh yeah 100%, yeah, totally. So just to give you a quick rundown of my history with Naughty Dog games, I have played every single Uncharted, but I've never felt like a deep connection to Naughty Dog up until this point, right? Because for me, Uncharted is like a very cool, very blockbustery kind of Indiana Jones ripoff game. But of course, we don't have an Indiana Jones game, so it kind of stands out in this space. That's why I don't really think there's a point for a movie, but we can get into that later. And but yeah, like, it's very enjoyable, high production value, good graphics, like, it's all very, very, very good in terms of Uncharted. But I've never, like, the story and the characters, they've never really like hit me as much as other games, right? Like Kratos or I don't know. Then this game comes along, they show it off in E3s and stuff like that, and I'm like, wow, this looks pretty interesting. Like, the way that the survival elements come in, like, each bullet seems to count. The graphics at that point were really amazing. That game kind of looked next gen at its at its point. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna pay attention to this, but it's ultimately a Naughty Dog game, so probably it's not gonna make me fall in love with it. Well, I was totally wrong, because I bought the game. I believe it was one of the first games I played when I moved here to Barcelona, and the story just grabs you immediately. I believe that the story is the main point of the game, because the gameplay, I mean, I'm a big survival fan, but it doesn't really do anything new. Like, you have upgrades, you have a gun, you have a bottle that you can throw, and
It's a stealth action game at its best.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't really excel at that either. Like, it doesn't really.
No, it's not something that you would be like. I don't think that most people. Actually, that's one of the reasons why I thought it was weird that they had a multiplayer element that they were going to be so focused on. Even now, like back then, it's like it's not the core of the game. Like the core of the game is like you have this very touching story.
Exactly. And normally with games, I'm very thorough when I play. I mean, I like to explore everything when I like it, of course. I like to do every side quest and blah, blah, blah. And this was one of the first games I can think of where there was one point of the game where I was like, I can't go through that hallway. I need to know what's going on. Like, I have to go forward. I can't really stay here and explore everything. I need to know what's going to happen with Ellie. I need to know what's going to happen with Joel. And I loved the structure of having it by season. I thought it was really, really simple and really smart. The way that they handle it, like what happens when, and then when winter comes, like all that structure, I thought it was really, really stellar. And on the one hand, we have that, but then on the other hand, we have part 2, which was, I mean, I know I'm kind of cheating here and talking about 2 games, but bear with me. The thing about part 2, which kind of, to me, transcended a little bit beyond the games, is that there was this whole controversy of the leaks where there were, some cutscenes that leaked, and people saw that there were 2 characters that you played with, and one of them was Abby. People also saw, spoilers of course, that Joel dies and that Abby's the one who kills him. So I remember that among my friends, like, there were people who were very apprehensive. There were people who were a little bit more open-minded. I was feeling a little bit like, okay, so I love this character. I unfortunately got spoiled about Joel's death, which was really unfortunate, but it happened. But I was like, okay, so they are going to not only kill this character, but they're also going to make me then play as the person who killed the character that I really love, because I mean, like, we can get into a whole debate about whether Joel is the bad guy in the first one, which probably objectively is true, but ultimately, like, even though he's bad or good, or whether you agree with what he did or not, you develop a connection with him because you play with him like for, I don't know, 20, 15 hours. So I was like, how is Naughty Dog going to convince me that this is the right move? How are they going to make me empathize with this new character? How is this going to work? Because I can't see it. And even though I had that initial 50% open mind, 50% apprehension, they did it. Like they totally not only delivered, but they kind of did it beyond my wildest expectations. The way that this game made me feel in terms of empathy, in terms of like putting yourself in other people's shoes. I know that for some people this is kind of like a very Disney message, or like a very, it's obvious that everybody has their own story, but to me, I thought that they did it so well. The presentation is so good. The yeah, like the way they structure it, the emotional beats of the game. Like I have never felt such hate when killing someone in a game, like when you kill some of Abby's friends with Ellie, and then when you're at that final battle between them both, like I didn't want to press the buttons because I didn't want them to hurt each other. Like I was just so and like I've never felt that, and I'm never gonna feel it again with this game because I already know the beats.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my essay. So
I actually reinstalled The Last of Us 2 because they had the patch where it could run at 60 FPS, and I was like, well, I got to check this out for sure. And I couldn't finish it. I was like, this is no longer, like, I'm no longer that engaged with it here, because like you see, the first time the story really drives you forward, at least for me. Like I finished this game on, I think it took me like 23 hours. I don't even remember. I finished it like it came out, I think it was on a Friday. I don't know, because it came out during the pandemic, so it could have been a Friday. But I literally took the day off to play it, and then I played the next day, and then it was, I think it was, no, I think it was a Friday. Took Friday off, then on Saturday, then on Sunday. I remember, I don't know if you haven't played this, little spoilers, but or not, maybe this is even better than a spoiler. Like you reached that part in California, and I thought, well, this is an epilogue. I think it was like 2 a.m. or like, no, I think it's like 1 a.m. And it's like, okay, this is the end. I'm gonna play like a little bit more and wrap up the game. And it wasn't like that. It was like 4. You still have like 4 more hours of gameplay and story beats and stuff, and also the hardest part of the game, I have to say, like that whole part, that the whole last part in California is just like, please, let's fucking stop this. Because I think that one thing that the game does, there are a few moments where you're like, I really don't like this, and I think that for me was, and it's not like I don't like the sense that this is bad, but like I'm not enjoying this, I'm not having fun. It's like when you kill the dogs, it's just too fucking hardcore. I was like, I'm fucking Naughty Dog. Why am I killing dogs? Like I'm fucking slaughtering them. So I definitely didn't like that, especially as a gameplay element that it was almost impossible to eliminate. Like going through those areas where I kill dogs was pain in the ass. But now going to actual critique, which is the last part, I was no longer on board with this adventure. And I think that for me was something that I believe it was different. I think it was a unique experience. But after you come back from the theater, and then Tommy says to you, she's here in California. Like I don't think the story sold me as well as the first one of like, this is the right thing to do. I was like, just don't go, bitch. Like you have a family, you have a kid, you have everything. Go to therapy. Like this is not gonna like. And then you go through that part, which is also the hardest part of the game. And at the end, I was just tired. It was emotionally draining, and I think that as a game, it's very unique as an experience. But I'm not doing it anytime soon. Like, and I think that the fact that I picked it up, saw it at 60 FPS, 4K, and I was like, oh, don't really feel like it. It just says how much the story drives you forward. And in the first game, it does. Like the first game slaps. It absolutely delivers in every single metric that you can think of. And by the end, you know that this is a complex decision, and it's kind of like this utilitarian thing of whether we give it a try, and then how do we, like, how do we distribute this vaccine, or like what's the point? Are you going to use a political weapon? Like, do they can do it? And you're like, fuck it, just save her. Like, it's like you understand the conflict, and you're there, and it's complex, and that's life for the most part. So the first time that happened, the first time I saved Ellie, I was like, like there was no choice. Like this is what I had to do, and they didn't do that for me in the
100%.
second game. I was just like, stop, stop already. Like they killed him for a fucking reason, and then the whole thing, like there's kind of like a suspension of disbelief. Like six guys, they travel across the world, and they happen to find the guy, and they kill him, and then this girl with a horse and her girlfriend, they go to the other side of the world without a plan. It's also like, I don't know if I buy it. Like you buy it eventually, but in the end, I think that I felt that the game was a little bit too long. But again, like I enjoyed it. I'm not a transphobe, so I guess I wasn't that mad for the fact that there was representation in the fucking game. Like I obviously the discussion around this game also got like completely intoxicated. But I think I understand. I try to understand like where the trouble comes from, and I understand when you're trying to subvert expectations of a franchise that no one gives a shit about. Like what happened with Thor in Thor Ragnarok. Like no one cared about Thor. So they were like, well, what happens if we actually make it almost a comedy and then it's super colorful and then Thor is now this slapstick guy that just makes jokes and is almost drunk all the time. And then it's like, okay. But when you do that with Star Wars and we haven't had a Star Wars movie in 20 years, it's like don't I want to see a Star Wars movie. And I think that the case with The Last of Us 2 is that I wanted The Last of Us 2. Like I didn't want this massive subvertive experience, although it delivered to some extent. I think I would have more fun if maybe Joel takes a backseat, or maybe he's more of a part of the like if he dies for something kind of thing. I don't know. Also, it felt for me. It felt it's complex, so it's not. It was like I still put the game a 10. Like I think everyone should play it, but it's not a game I'm gonna play 3 or 4 times as I did with the first one.
Oh no, I platinumed it, and I don't think I'm gonna touch it in. I don't know if I'm gonna touch it again, quite honestly. But even though like that doesn't detract from the fact that it was really meaningful, because the reason why I say I wouldn't touch it again is because that first experience was so meaningful that having a second experience that is lesser than just scares me. So
Yeah,
I would rather just leave it like that.
I still think it's pretty solid.
Oh yeah, 100%. But yeah, no, I think it's great. Like this game is one of the games that, I mean, of course, it got very toxic, and that doesn't really have much excuse.
And actually,
But
some of the
the
modders of the subreddit of The Last of Us 2 try to pin some death threats accusation on the fandom of girlfriend reviews, and it turns out that he was making up the threats. It was himself that he was saying that people were harassing him, and he was like, "Whoa!" And I think that they finally they didn't shut it down, but they almost did shut down the subreddit, because for those who don't know, the Last of Us 2 subreddit is a subreddit dedicated 100% to shit on the game. Like, and even to this day, like they have their inside jokes, their memes, and it's super toxic. And don't really recommend it. And but yeah, that almost became like an institution of like kind of like gaming circle jerk self parody thing. So
yeah, to 100%. And yeah, I don't really like your criticisms are totally valid because you're giving me reasons. You're giving me like I felt this or I felt that, blah blah blah. But if your excuse is there was a woman in the game, like
she can't
or
be
the
that strong.
yeah, it's like
Who gives a fuck, bro? It's just yeah, she has muscles. That's it. Or even the initial leaks that were saying like Abby's transgender, which in cases like if she was like, what's the fucking problem? Like, but then again, that completely that I think that those people were gonna shit on any game that would came out. So
yeah,
so it's like it's not like they
100%.
didn't give them the game. It's like they were gonna shit on any game. Like it's just how it is.
That is how they are. So my friend, give me your first game, I believe.
Breath of the
Yes.
Wild. Like
Breath of the Wild.
I would love to be again. I the first time I saw a dragon on Breath of the Wild, I was holding my Switch on a flight to Berlin, and it was like 10 p.m. Everyone's silent, almost sleeping in the plane, and then I see that something is crawling out of the water, and it's a huge dragon. And I just remember thinking like, what the fuck, what is this? um and that's the feeling throughout the whole game. It's a game that when you play, you can play it a second time. So I played it a second time, so almost like 100% it. I think I don't have all the seats, but I have a lot of them. And
Don't get them. Don't get the
it's a
seats.
downward spiral. And I think that just that moment, just like the idea of like rediscovering all the areas, figuring out the puzzles. It's just such a entire, like the first time you're climbing something and then it rains and you're asleep. Like there's so many mechanics that the first time you experiment them, you just say, "Oh, what the fuck," and then it makes sense. And then you ask yourself, can I do this? And then you can. And it just never stops. Things like if you drop some apples into the fire, they turn into cooked apples. And I don't know, I have a, I guess, similar things like if you set a leaf on fire, you can use it to basically burn your enemies and stuff like that all the time. I think well, actually with the arrows, like if you put your arrows
Oh yeah.
into exactly into a fire, you can create fire arrows that are super expensive. And it's like, wow, like all those little things one by one, they're just insane. And also like the first time you walk into the sword forest, I think it's the Kokoro forest. Oh, it's not Kokoro forest, I don't remember the name, but the forest where there's the master sword, it's just like, it's like a secret, like, oh my god, what is in here? And it's just magical. Like it's a game that just never stops surprising you with new and cooler things. So yeah, it's definitely, if I could just smack my head and like play it again, I would love to do it. I know it by heart now, and I think that the other playthroughs, even the master playthrough, I did one of those. They're cool, but they're almost like a different game, and they're the same world. It feels like you go to a place. It feels like, I don't know, going to your hometown or like revisiting old friends. But the first time you get there, it really feels like an adventure. So number one game that I would lobotomize out of my head.
I think that's a great pick. I mean, I echo everything you said. I think it's a fantastic game. This is the first. It's funny how we come full circle. Since Ocarina of Time, which is 1998. This one is 2017.
Yeah,
Correct? Yes. We it took us 27 years. Sorry, no wait, 19 years. 19 years? Yes, 19 years to change the formula of a Zelda game, and nobody asked for it. If Breath of the Wild had been another Ocarina of Time 9, I think everybody would have been happy.
yeah.
Like nobody was asking for this, but they gave it to us, and I have my differences with Nintendo on their latest things that they've done and what they continue to do.
As a company.
But this, yeah, but the software they produce is like some of the best quality out there, and this game is such a delicious experience for anybody who's an open world fan. And even if you're not, I would recommend you to check it out. I remember like you know when like something that happens to me. I don't know if you agree or if it happens to you, but sometimes I kind of plan out like, okay, I'm gonna play Yakuza Kiwami, and then I'm gonna play this game because this game is 6 hours long or more or less. So I kind of build out my chronology here. This is one of those games where you get so lost that you don't care what's going on. Like you don't care if you have work things to do. You don't care about other games. You don't care about anything. It's like you get absorbed into this world where you can do, like you said, so many things. You can cook. You have this thing where if there's a storm, you can't really wear anything that's metal because you get fucked.
It's an open world
You can
experience. Like it's everything is optional. Absolutely everything is optional. You could just walk right out into the Ganon Castle, into the Hyrule Castle, and kicks his ass.
and that level design of that map is amazing. Like the castle
The castle
is
doesn't
really
get
really
enough
cool.
credit because a lot of people at the end, they're just like, I do remember like the first time I fought it, I had to fight Ganon. I was like, okay, I'll fight him this Saturday, and the whole weekend was just like, like doing like banana pancakes and preparing and like getting the best gear. And then I went at it, went straight up, and I fucking killed the guy in 20 minutes. And it was like, that was my Saturday plan. you know, just like that, literally just like that. I was like, I fucked up. And then in my next playthrough, I understood that the castle itself is kind of like part of the map. It's a dangerous part of the map. You have to be well prepared, but going in really pays off if you do a really good resource management. And the game really challenges everything what it means for Zelda to exist. Like some people are against like the weapon attrition, but I believe that the weapon attrition is the soul of the game. The fact that what's important is what you know and how to use those resources rather than picking up new weapons. And because otherwise everyone would be using the same two or three weapons the whole game, and that really changes everything. And learning those things from scratch is just too good. Like I think it's a game that when I was doing the list, I was like, well, this is also a very recent game. But I don't necessarily think there's a lot of shame in that. Like some of these games were part of my childhood, but if I were to make like a top 10 list of games, I probably played them in the last 7 years. No apologies. Like
Oh yeah, no.
like Ghost of Tsushima, Control, like these are games that I played last year, this one, and I could say they're some of the best games I've ever played in my life because the industry is really pushing itself forward. I I don't feel bad for saying that I some of the best games that you're ever gonna play like came out like last year. Like they were cool games back then, but and they had great moments, but the industry is definitely moving forward, and I'm excited what's gonna come next. Just great.
Oh yeah, no. I totally agree with that point because I think that sometimes, and this happens with film, music, whatever you want to say, where people get very attached to what they liked when they were teenagers or at some point of their lives. Like, how many times have I heard like that? Oh, Metallica's never been better than when Master of Puppets came out, and it's like, dude, I love Death Magnetic, and I love the one that came after that. I don't love Saint Anger, but that's kind of my point. Like, good things come out even when you're out of the loop.
Yeah, but
That's
imagine
what it
how
is.
cool it would be that the best Metallica album comes out this year. It's like
Could happen.
but it would be amazing. It would be like it's almost like kind of like a comic story. Like I think it was Tarantino that was saying that he's going to retire after his 10th film, and if that's the case, he has done 9 amazing films, and probably the last one he made is the best one. Like, and it's incredible. Like I just but again, like you lose a little bit of your because like it's part of it if your identity in a way. So it's like if this is the best thing and it just was released now, then what was I before? I was I like didn't know better? And I think that happens with people when they watch like Blade Runner, and the first one is a classic, but if you ask me, I like the second one better. And it's crazy because it's a sequel. It came out. It wasn't that successful, but I shouldn't be apologetic about being like this is good. This is better. This is more up to date. It's more exciting. It's not as groundbreaking, but it's just epic. But then again, it leaves a void of oh, so before I liked something shitty or like if it's so good, why wasn't it released 40 years ago?
Yeah, no, like people have this. Well, I think it has a name. I mean, other than nostalgia, it's like people think everything that came before them was better,
No,
and I don't really want to sell pedophiles' body of work, but there's a movie by not Harrelson, Woody
Woody Allen.
Allen.
Woody Allen.
Yeah, Woody Allen, Midnight in Paris, that kind of deals with this thing where everything that came before was always better, and then when you go to that time, everything that came before was even better.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of search for what's old thing that's very pointless.
Yeah.
But I agree that Blade Runner 2049 is to me better and to me amazing. Like that's one of the best films I've seen in the last years. Totally agree with you there. I kind of want to disagree with you with something because you're always saying things and I always say I
we,
agree.
we always we always agree exactly.
What a boring podcast.
Exactly. We need like a more controversial topic, or just
Yeah.
disagree offline and then fake a debate.
Exactly. I will be on the no Last of Us part.
Exactly.
You'll
I
be
just
on
want you to know, like, say like a bad game that I hate. Like, oh, I don't even like. That's the other thing. Like with me with games, the games I don't like, I just don't like them. Like it's not. I don't. I don't go in like they just. It's not like they don't exist. It's just like oh like well they did their best kind of thing.
Yeah,
But what's your
exactly. It's and
what's your top moment, gaming top moment in the
well,
history of gaming that you want to
tough moment.
relive?
Well, actually, for me, it's kind of anticlimactic because I kind of told you before we went into this. The fifth one, because I wasn't doing it in them in that order. The fifth one was actually hard for me to get to. So I have a couple here, and I'm just kind of making time before I choose the one that I'm going to talk about. So, okay, let's go with this one. Batman Arkham Asylum.
And this is a solid one.
Like, this game, I remember I've always been a Batman fan. Like Batman the Animated Series when I was a kid. I recently got the Blu-ray because it's sitting right there, and it's like such an amazing thing. Of course, I grew up with a Spanish dubs, so I didn't really have the Mark Hamill, Kevin Conroy nostalgia that this game brought forward again. But even though I didn't have those memories, I still benefited from that in this case, where having those voices there, I think that I could honestly say, including the live action actors that have done Batman and the Joker, these are the best. Like Mark Hamill is the best Joker to me, and Kevin Conroy is the best Bruce Wayne / Batman. Unapologetically, I would say that. Like Jared Leto, of course, is really, no, Jared Leto sucks. But no, I was gonna say Heath Ledger, of course, is amazing, and I love him, and of course Joaquin Phoenix as well. But this guy, like the way he portrays the character, is the way that the character kind of wants to be portrayed.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, because Heath Ledger did something different. He did something that we didn't expect, which was totally amazing, and the kind of the same with Joaquin Phoenix, right? But this is like the classic, and that's fine. So this game, I remember the first time I heard of it. I kind of saw a trailer, and like at this point, I didn't have a podcast. I didn't go into IGN. I didn't follow them on social media. This was
11?
29.
29.
No,
Okay.
sorry, 2009. So I was like not in the loop of the industry and whatever it is. But I still saw this trailer and it hit me. Something hit me about it. It's like, so wait, you're Batman and you have these actors in it which are so legit, and then you're stuck in the asylum with all these villains? It's like, that is such a good premise. Like, is it like this could even be a movie? Although a movie wouldn't have done it much justice, I think.
Yeah, I think
And
I
then
think that it's at its best in a video game.
100%. And then I got to play it, and it was everything that I was expecting and more. Like the detective parts where you're scanning around for things. The combat was so revolutionary, where you could literally punch anybody you wanted. Like the free flow of
The
it,
graphics, it looked great. Like it looked perfect.
amazing. And then the Joker, like the way the art style did every character looks amazing, but the Joker, like with a big smile and rotten teeth and everything, is like, I don't know. It's just this game hit me in a way that I didn't expect it, and it's safe to say that like Batman games before this were all crappy. Like they were all horrible.
Yeah. They did never figure out a formula until this one, and this one figured out everything: the detective work, the gadgets, your role in the universe, the villains that didn't show but they were still there in Arkham, or they had been, the lore, the riddles, like everything was insane. And I think that they knew this was kind of like a test, like for what could come next. But even if it was a test or if it was just in Arkham, they knew like this is what we can do and we were gonna do it, and it was gonna be great.
Totally. And then when of course this spawned a series of other games, including Batman Arkham City and Arkham Knight, which to me, in terms of gameplay, you could argue that the story blah blah blah, but the games got progressively better, like all of them. I know that the last one has a lot of criticism because of the tank slash
Yeah, I think
Batmobile.
that's a thing for me. It really hurt the game because by definition, every Batman product needs to have a Batmobile. It's kind of like a corporate thing because they sell well when it comes to toys. So when they build it, it had to be a core part of the gameplay. Like that's kind of like a production thing that came from Warner, and the game didn't shine there for me because I found that some of the things were cool that you could do, but then it became a tank, and there were like stealth missions where you would have to like use your car and you were fighting other tanks, and it's like this is not like it wasn't fun. It wasn't like about racing or like catching the other guys. It wasn't a mobility. It wasn't a mobility aspect of the game. It was a gameplay and combat aspect of the game that for me felt completely unnecessary. And yeah, like I think that that game was still the breadth of like all the things you could do on the side quests and whatnot. It was really cool, but also it had kind of like the secret ending that was hidden if you figure out all the riddles. I think it was. I didn't like that as much, so I would still go that the first one was my favorite. Like it was just perfect.
Yeah, because also like, yeah, I mean, I think I agree with those criticisms. It's just that for me, they didn't really bring it down as much. But I totally agree. Like, like it's not Batman to have stealth tank missions.
Yeah, and I think that they it's such a good game that anything bad brings it down like a lot. I think that that's kind of like my thing with the tank, that it was such a core part of the gameplay and it was so bad that it was like affecting the perception of the whole game, because you spend like 40 or yeah, like 40 or 30% of your time inside a tank, and some of the missions unnecessarily would drift into fighting with the tank, and I thought that that was design wise uninspiring. So maybe the second one is my favorite. Favorite. I don't know. I just really want them to do another one of these games because that studio is really it's really solid.
Yeah, I would too, but I mean, I don't know what the future is gonna be for that, because I know that they're making
The
this
Suicide.
Justice League. No,
They're doing the Suicide Squad
Suicide,
exactly.
yeah, Suicide Squad game, and I'm a little bit afraid of that because I know that it's gonna have a multiplayer focus, and to me that always kind of maybe detracts from the single
Yeah.
player experience. So I am wary of that.
Mhm.
Also, there's a weird thing where they're making this Arkham Knights. No, what's the name of the other Batman game they're doing?
I don't.
Knights of.
Yeah, they're making another one, but I don't remember the name. But it has also to do with Arkham. It's like, but
Yeah,
again, it's kind of like a multiplayer as well.
yeah, exactly. So on one hand, you have the fact that it's kind of co-op focused, where you have Robin, you have
Yeah,
Nightwing, Batgirl, and what's the other one? Oh,
Red Wing is it?
Red. No, no, his name is Red. Not Red Skull. Red something.
Let me find out.
Red Mask. Red Hood. No,
Red
Red
Hood.
Hood.
Red Hood.
Yeah,
You have it.
that's the guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds cool, but they say that this is a reboot of the Batman verse that they did with Arkham, but the premise is exactly the same ending of Arkham Knight. So it's kind of confusing, and I don't really understand what they did that. Also, I mean, are you really gonna tell me that you're gonna do this whole thing, invest so many millions of dollars, and that Batman is not gonna arrive at the last scene of the game?
Subverting
It's like,
expectations. That's a thing. Like it's the whole subverting expectations. It's a thing. They're doing it, and I think that they really don't understand that. Like, and when I say they, I mean corporate executives and creatives. Like, people just want a Batman game. They want it. Like, it's that straightforward. They're not that tired of it. They don't want another Call of Duty. And you could subvert all the expectations in the world with Call of Duty, with Assassin's Creed, with FIFA. Like, there are a bunch of franchises that they deserve to be subverted. But we haven't had one of these games in like 7 years or like 6 years or something like that. Like, it's just like, yeah, just give us another Batman, reboot it, change the character, make it funny. I don't know, but like, we miss that experience of this open world game that was really solid, and he had like really good precision when it came to like how to be fun. So I don't know. Like, I would like to play one of those games. I have that
yeah,
itch.
absolutely.
I don't want a Robin Hood game. A Robin game, not the Robin Hood game. A Robin Hood game could
Robin
be
Hood.
good. Like Assassin's Creed Robin Hood. That would be cool. There you go.
That would be
Hire me,
cool.
Ubisoft. I'll fix all your problems. I'm sure.
For some reason, it just sounds so funny. Assassin's Creed Robin
That would
Hood.
be that would be robbing the hood. Exactly.
Oh
That's
my
what they
god,
doing.
Robin the
From
Hood.
Robbing the
Ro-
Hood, that would be the otaku review. From Robbing the Hood with their other shitty games to Robin Hood and actually making something legit.
oh my god, I did want to give some honorable mentions to some
Fantastic.
games that debated the fifth place here with Batman Arkham Asylum, and it's Dishonored. I think that this is the team, the most exciting team that Microsoft acquired is Arkham, so not Arcane,
Okay.
not Arkham, Arcane, and they're the makers of Dishonored and also Prey. This game, when I played the first one back in 360, blew my mind because it was like Bioshock meets Assassin's
That's
Creed,
good.
and so fucking good.
And the story
So
was
I
great, and you
recommend
had some decision making and stuff. So
100%. And the sequel was so underrated. Like everybody, like it was critically acclaimed, but supposedly it didn't sell very well, and that is such a fucking good game. There's also Death of the Outsider, which is kind of like a standalone expansion sort of thing. Then I have here Resident Evil 2 remake. I almost put this as my number 5 because I have a lot of nostalgia for the first Resident Evil 2. I played it with my cousin as well. I was batshit scared of this game. So to me, experiencing it again with such a well realized remake with these amazing graphics was a really cool experience. So I loved that game.
I remember like one of the scariest moments in my life playing video games is in the interrogation room in the police station when the what's the name of the leaker jumps out through the window through the mirror, and I literally turned off the N64. I don't know how, but I just like I turned it off. Like I'm not kidding. Like it was kind of like I turned off the whole thing. It was so scary, and it marked me. It was like this is the most. I was alone in my house. It was night, and it was like fuck this game. I replayed it the next day, and having that jump scare happen again, but being ready, my brain was like, you know what's like I knew it was gonna happen. It still was scary, but yeah, like the remake was super solid, and I'm thankful that it exists because it reshaped all the other remakes. Like thanks to that remake, now we're serious about remakes. I would say like it proved to be such a massive commercial success that it's not like oh this is the remake of Shadow of the Colossus, which more people should have played it and blah blah blah. No, this is like hey this game was a hit and we can do it again. And then thanks to that, they also did Final Fantasy VII, and like in general, I think it's a positive trend for the market. Probably like all these projects like were already on their way at the same time together, and it's kind of like a whole thing. But the fact that one does so well means first like the other ones don't get canceled, and that new projects will come thanks to this one. So
Yeah, absolutely. And also kind of redefine what a remake is because before, I remember we had Resident Evil 1 remake, which was for GameCube. And that was kind of a solid remake, but it didn't add anything new, I believe. I mean, some gameplay elements, of course. But this one is a reimagining and like they totally remade the game.
yeah,
It's not like grabbing the assets and stamping on some new textures on it. It's really,
new
really
cringy
cool.
dialogue.
New cringy
That's the
dialogue.
thing about I love
be that.
about that brand, that flavor, Resident Evil. That Village doesn't have, and that the Seven didn't have, which is like kind of this, like I don't know, like I think there was one dialogue when Leon meets Claire like outside a police station. He's like, "Hey Claire, how's everything going?" She's like, "Oh, you're here." And it's like, are we like it's 2021 and we didn't update this to be like two people effectively, you know, at their verge of trauma discussing how they're going to survive, like if they're really going to flirt, you know, those kind of moments. And the fact that they still have that is cool. Like it just is part of the brand, I would say.
Totally, but I would disagree. First time I disagree.
Nine,
Where in Resident Evil 8, the things that Ethan says, especially when he kills a boss, are super cringy.
super
It's like
stupid.
that's what you get for being a bad person. It's like what did you like? It's horrible.
It's a bit over the top. Same with the, but I would say like for example like the bad guy, not the bad guy, like the police chief on Resident Evil 2, his motives and the way he talks it's like it's you can't like that can't be a real person. Not even like it can be a real person. Like who wrote like this character can't exist. It's just he just fucking lost it. I don't know. It's unbelievable. Like you don't buy it and you just play through it. And it's pretty cool. Also, the element of the fact that you have to finish the game twice, they still kept that, so that was legit as well. Which again, I think that the best games are just straight out coming from Japan at this point. So I'm really happy that they massively understand what works from their games and they push in that direction.
You know what? I think that kind of opens the last segment of the game, sorry, of the podcast, which is what have we been playing. I think we've both been playing some Japanese games as well.
You're still
But
deep into Yakuza.
oh yes, I'm deep in that rabbit hole now. I'm in Yakuza Kiwami. I think I'm gonna finish that
Wow.
today, which is the remake of the first one, and then I think I'm gonna be playing the Ascent, which comes out in an hour from now.
Okay, really?
Yeah, really cool. It's on Game Pass, so I already have it installed. I just need Xbox to say,
Exactly.
yeah, you can play it. But yeah, that's gonna be pretty cool. And I think I'm really enjoying Yakuza, but I'm scared of like binging it so hard that then I'm gonna be disgusted by it. So I just want to take my time with it.
Yeah, take a break.
And yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think it's very interesting what you're saying about Japanese games. And if you have to go, let me know because we're nearing the end, so don't worry. Okay, cool. So the Japanese games were in the 90s they were the dominators of the industry, I would say. From the 90s to the 2000s, like things were moving in the West as well, but Japanese games were very dominant and very very good, very well established, let's say. Then 2005 to 2010, for some reason everything went to hell in Japan. Like things that came from there were like very poorly influenced by the West and stuff like that, where we got things like Resident Evil 5 and 6, which were horrible. We got, I don't know, like very weird things. And I remember that there was a time where the only good thing in Japan was like Platinum Games.
Also, remember that they were building their own JRPG games that they're very popular there and in some parts of Asia, but not in the rest of.
That is also true. So yeah, I would say like what we got in the West in that moment was really weird. Like they were going through a kind of a crisis, I would say. Then we go into the 2010s and 2020s, which was where we're at now. And I think, like, if you were to ask me, like, do you like Japanese games? I would have maybe answered yeah, maybe. But then I started to think about it, and it's like Metal Gear, Japanese. Now with Yakuza, of course, mega Japanese. Final Fantasy, Japanese. What else do we have?
I would add Nier Automata as well, like one of my favorite games of the past generation, Japanese too.
Yoko Taro's games. From Software
From
games,
software games
100%
are
Japanese.
I do. I like Japanese games. There's no way around it. And I think that they understand the cool, like what makes a game tick. I think that's something that we are losing a little bit in the West. I think that indie games right now are not as strong as they used to be at some point, in the sense of like novelty or like what they can do commercially, because I think that also studios haven't pushed that hard for indie games anymore. Like if you want indie games or you want something, you go to Steam and you can get anything in the world. Like the marketplace is insane, but you're not gonna feel it like a experience that you have to get, like how it was with Journey, for example, with the PS3, which was like, hey, everyone should play this. Like Sony effectively telling you you should play this from this studio. Then that studio kept doing their own thing, and it, like, they kept making journeys, to call it that way. But I think that we also have this huge stagnation on AAA games, where everything is an open world game with a bunch of question marks, and that's not really making it for for everyone. We have the shooter genre and all the live service games that are taking over. So it feels weird. And I think that right now the best single player experiences are coming from Japan.
Yep. I mean, there's no way around it. If you want to know more about this topic, watch the previous episode where we talk about one Western company that went to hell. And yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Of course, that doesn't mean every Western studio is suffering from this. I mean, the majority of Sony's first party, I think, is one of the best things in the industry. The purchases that Microsoft has done lately with Arcane, Machine Games, In Exile, Obsidian, like they have some banger studios that are going to come up with some very cool things. So, but yeah, like even though that's a reality, the Activisions of the world and the Ubisofts of the world are still doing their thing. And
well.
Yeah,
I also think that now that I'm also playing, still on the same topic of like what we're playing, I've been playing like Mass Effect 2 a lot, to the point which I might take a break between the second and the third one because I'm playing like I've been like 30 hours already, like trying to like help every character and do every side quest. And it had been so long since I felt. By the way, Mass Effect 2 looks like a next gen game, like almost like obviously it has rough edges, but it looks perfect for a PS5 game. They did a really great job restoring everything. I do have to say that it's been so long since I felt like I played a game where everything was so like you had so many elements in a single player experience, because I guess that the natural train of thought that any studio would have is like, okay, we're using all these resources for a single player experience. We need to put them in the multiplayer experience as well. So it's just a pleasure to play a game that has that much love for its own world building, storytelling, and characters. So it's like I think it's part of the golden era of Western role playing games that it has drifted into non-existence to some extent.
yeah, and well, I mean, I hope that BioWare can get their shit together with both Dragon Age 4 and with Mass Effect 4 as well.
Go back to basics.
We don't back to basics, but we don't know that. And we have reached the end of the episode. This was a really cool one. This was a bit of a long one, but I don't really want to, like have us rush it. No. If you're interested, hopefully you will watch. I would encourage you to do so. Please check out Mr. Caroli's podcast.
Yeah, you can go to Hammerspace Podcast if you want to check out my newsletter and me rambling in Spanish. So hammerspacepodcast.com. And once again, thank you for inviting me, Juan. Had a really good time.
Of course, we're going to try to have all these subjects to be pretty cool, pretty interesting, so that we can, bring those gems out of our
hidden
brains.
Gems. Those hidden gems like Metal Gear and Dead Space and World of Warcraft. No one's heard of them.
Nobody's heard of them. So yeah, we need to help those guys.
Exactly.
Man. That's why. Well, if you like this, subscribe and like it. Share it with your friends. Share it with anybody who is a fan of this, a fan of video games. I hope they will enjoy it as well. And we will see you on the next episode of the podcast. Bye.